See, Marvin in the last few months of his life thought someone was trying to kill him.
Oh, the drugs are making him paranoid.
He was paranoid, and he thought someone was trying. He'd get on the elevator and punch every floor, so he wouldn't know what floor he got off on.
In fact, the last 7 years of my life haven't been exactly ecstatic for me. I haven't been ecstatic. I've been happy and somewhat, most of the time, pretty depressed.
I was a manic depressant. I was at my lowest ebb. I really didn't feel like I was loved. And because I didn't feel loved, I felt useless.
He was one of Motown's brightest stars, a voice like silk and lyrics that hit the soul. But Marvin Gaye's life took a terrifying turn in his final years. Paranoia, death threats, and desperate acts to protect himself. Why was the singer so sure someone was after him?
I hate to answer questions that make me appear that weak, but being an honest soul, I have to tell you, yes, I was quite close to that point at one time.
What was Marvin hiding from, and did he know something we didn't? As he stepped out onto the stage in a bulletproof vest, hiring bodyguards with loaded guns, was this just mental unraveling, or a real danger lurking in the shadows?
See, Marvin in the last few months of his life thought someone was trying to kill him.
Oh, the drugs are making him paranoid.
He was paranoid, and he thought someone was trying. He'd get on the elevator and punch every floor, so he wouldn't know what floor he got off on.
Was Marvin simply battling his inner demons, or were there forces in the music industry targeting him for reasons we might never fully understand?
I think about it all the time. I think about it now, and someone was trying to him.
Yeah.
He was trying to.
He was trying to kill.
Absolutely.
To understand what haunted Marvin Gaye during his final months, we have to look beyond the tragic end where he was fatally shot by his own father in 1984. In truth, Marvin's troubles had been brewing for years. Some say it was only a matter of time. He had been spiraling, suffering from paranoia, fear, and even wearing bulletproof vests out of sheer terror. In interviews leading up to his death, Marvin hinted that he feared for his life. But what or who was he afraid of? Was this just a side effect of fame? Or did he actually have enemies in high places? Let's not forget that the music industry has a dark underbelly. Just look at the rumors surrounding mysterious disappearances, even sudden deaths of high-profile figures. Could Marvin have been a target?
In fact, the last 7 years of my life haven't been exactly ecstatic for me. I haven't been ecstatic. I've been happy and somewhat, most of the time, pretty depressed.
And there's more. Gaye had attempted S-side multiple times throughout his life, but his actions didn't just speak of internal struggles. He believed he was in real danger. So was he genuinely at risk, or was this all in his mind? Let's dive into the twisted, hidden history of Marvin Gaye's life. Marvin Gaye didn't start out as a tragic figure. He was one of Motown's brightest stars, adored for his smooth voice and emotional delivery. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1939, Marvin grew up in a religious household under a strict father. But Marvin's father was more than just strict. He was deeply abusive, physically and emotionally, shaping Marvin's early years with fear and uncertainty. By the time Marvin entered the music world, he was ready to break free of his father's control. His breakout hits in the 60s with Motown brought him not only fame, but a sense of liberation. Yet, even as he hit the top of the charts, the shadow of his upbringing and the trauma inflicted by his father followed him. Marvin Gaye wasn't always the smooth, soulful singer everyone came to adore. He actually started out as a drummer, but with his first big hit, Stubborn Kind of Fellow, Marvin quickly rose in the ranks, becoming one of Motown's most treasured voices. By 1973, he was recording unforgettable tracks with legends like Diana Ross, and he didn't stop there. Marvin was experimenting with producing his own records and even playing every instrument. It was clear to everyone around him that Marvin was not just a singer, he was a game changer.
I write my music according to my lifestyle. If I'm sad, I write sad music. If I'm being divorced, I write divorce albums. If I'm sexy, if I feel hot, no I'll write a horny album.
Fast forward to the early 80s, and Marvin Gaye was enjoying a career resurgence that few artists ever achieve. In 1983, he was riding high. His hit S Healing had just won 2 Grammy Awards. His album Midnight Love was climbing the charts, and he had scored his 8th #1 on the Black Albums chart. After years of struggle, scandals, and a rough divorce, Marvin's comeback was in full swing, and for the first time, he was getting the recognition he'd always deserved.
Thank you very kindly, ladies and gentlemen. I am not very much for speeches. I'm not much of a public speaker, I always say that. I've waited a very long time 20-some years to win.
But music was not the only thing he was good at. In the late 60s and early 70s, Marvin Gaye decided to try something different, acting. While his music career was taking off, he made small appearances in 2 films, The Ballad of Andy Crocker and Chrome and Hot Leather. Both of these films were tied to the Vietnam War, which was a major topic in American culture at the time. Gaye took on roles as Vietnam War veterans, a reflection of the era's increasing focus on the war's effects on soldiers. The Ballad of Andy Crocker was one of the first films to examine what Vietnam veterans went through when they came back home. It painted a picture of the struggles and challenges they faced as they tried to reintegrate into society. Meanwhile, Chrome and Hot Leather had a slightly different twist, telling the story of a group of Green Berets who take vengeance on a biker gang. Though neither of these films became major hits, they marked Gaye's foray into acting, which he had hoped would follow in the footsteps of other entertainers like Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. His good looks, smooth voice, and popularity seemed to make him a natural for the big screen. In fact, some people thought Gaye could have had a successful acting career alongside his music, but ultimately, he didn't pursue it further. The films were forgettable, but they showed that Gaye had big dreams beyond music, though those dreams would become entangled in the complex web of his personal life. Marvin Gaye's private life was far from simple. His first marriage was to Anna Gordy, the sister of Motown's founder Berry Gordy. They adopted a child from Anna's niece, Denise Gordy, who was only 16 when she had the baby. But things weren't as straightforward as they seemed. Michael Eric Dyson's book, Mercy, Mercy Me, The Art, Loves, and Demons of Marvin Gaye, revealed that Marvin was actually the biological father of Denise's child. In a situation eerily reminiscent of the biblical story of Abraham and Sarah, Gaye had an intimate relationship with the 15-year-old Denise in order to have a child because his wife Anna couldn't get pregnant. Marvin kept this secret for years, but it became a public issue when it was revealed that Denise was underage at the time of their relationship. Gaye never admitted to being the father, likely because doing so could have led to serious legal trouble for him. Despite the personal drama, Gaye tried to make it work with Anna and later with his second wife, Janice Hunter. But by the late 70s, financial troubles began to haunt him. After divorcing Anna in 1977 and then separating from Janice in 1979, Gaye's money problems started to pile up. Faced with mounting debts, including back taxes and alimony payments, Gaye fled to London. At first, he thought a change of scenery might help, but London's fast-paced, party-heavy lifestyle only made things worse. Gaye later admitted that London was as wild as any city, filled with drugs, women, and temptations he couldn't avoid. So, he packed up again and moved to Belgium.
I was really broke, and things didn't look too good, so I was stuck in this forest, and I couldn't see. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you, I owed the government $4 million too, so that's enough to leave the country.
In Belgium, things finally started to turn around for Gaye, at least for a while. He found support from a Belgian businessman named Freddy Coussaer, who helped Gaye get back on his feet. It was in Belgium where Gaye produced his 1983 hit S Healing, one of the defining songs of his career and a massive success. But his financial issues were far from over. Gaye still owed millions of dollars in back taxes, alimony, and various other debts. When the dust settled, it was revealed that Gaye owed the IRS over $1 million, the state of California around $600,000, and alimony to both of his ex-wives totaling more than $300,000. To make matters worse, there was even a lawsuit from an unnamed woman who accused him of SAing her in the early 80s. But the drama didn't stop there. Gaye's relationship with his label, Motown, also started to fall apart. The final straw came when Motown released Gaye's album In Our Lifetime without his approval. Not only did they change the title of the album, they removed a crucial question mark, but they also altered the production of the album without consulting him. Gaye was furious. He felt that the removal of the question mark in the album's title changed its meaning entirely. In his mind, the question was the essence of the album. Is the world coming to an end in our lifetime? He also wasn't happy about how Motown added extra instrumentation to the song Far Cry, a track Gaye considered unfinished. He saw it as an attempt by the label to second-guess his artistic decisions, and he was outraged that they released the album despite his objections. Behind the scenes, Gaye was also struggling with his own sense of identity, especially in relation to his father. From a young age, Marvin was teased for his father's effeminate behavior, including his tendency to dress in women's clothing. This became a source of shame and confusion for Gaye, who struggled with his own feelings toward women's clothes. Gaye admitted in an interview with David Ritz that he was fascinated by the idea of dressing in women's clothing. but he made it clear that it wasn't about attraction to men. Instead, he said it was more about how he saw himself. Yet, this fascination caused him great discomfort. When he indulged in wearing women's clothes in private, he felt shame and guilt afterward, emotions that stayed with him for much of his life. But that wasn't even the worst part. Behind the scenes, his life was unraveling. Marvin was no stranger to dark times, but the last year of his life would prove to be his hardest. His personal struggles with drugs, broken relationships, and a growing sense of paranoia all seemed to intensify as his success grew. He had a reputation for being complex, brilliant but troubled. A man who poured his pain into his music but couldn't seem to escape it in real life. By early 1983, his paranoia was so severe that he rarely left home without a bulletproof vest. He even sent his father a gun, the same gun that would ultimately end his life. It's almost as if Marvin saw his fate coming. Friends said he was constantly on edge, even going as far as hiring bodyguards armed with loaded guns. He believed someone was out to get him, and it wasn't long before his inner circle started noticing just how deep his fears ran.
I want people to know that Marvin was not perfect. He wasn't a perfect. He had faults like everybody else.
Then, on February 13th, 1983, Marvin delivered one of the most memorable performances of his career. He sang the Star-Spangled Banner at the NBA All-Star Game, a performance so unique that it later became part of a Nike commercial. That same year, he also appeared on Soul Train and performed on Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, and Forever, a celebration of Motown's finest. These were Marvin's final TV appearances, and while he captivated audiences, those close to him saw a man weighed down by his struggles. Despite the public success, Marvin's private life was spiraling out of control. His mental health had been deteriorating for years, fueled by substance and lingering trauma from a childhood filled with. Marvin's sister and ex-wife later shared that he was struggling with self-doubt and anxiety, convinced he was being hunted by some unseen enemy. In the last months of his life, he took drastic measures, like instructing his drivers to circle around to lose any pursuers. He even called a press conference claiming he'd been poisoned and was under surveillance.
I did my best to reassure him that he was great, that people still loved him because he thought that he had lost his audience.
Drugs played a big role in Marvin's decline. In the 1960s, he experimented with coke, but by the 70s, he was deep into addiction. According to those close to him, Marvin spent his time bouncing between reading scripture and doing coke, a strange routine that hinted at the inner battle he faced. His substance grew worse over the years, and it wasn't just coke. He also experimented with PCP, a drug known for its intense, mind-altering effects. This lifestyle took a toll on Marvin's mental health, and in 1983, he attempted to end his life twice. In 1983, Marvin Gaye famously remarked that going on tour would probably end him. He wasn't being dramatic. He was in a financial pinch, forced into a touring schedule to tackle his mounting tax issues. So in April of that year, Gaye reluctantly began the S-Healing Tour in San Diego. This tour was supposed to be a revival, a means to repair his financial situation, but instead it marked the beginning of a tragic spiral. Wearing his signature military-style red outfit with gold buttons, now enshrined in the Motown Museum, he tried to present himself as a confident performer. Yet, behind the flashy exterior, Gaye was crumbling. His mental and physical health were deteriorating rapidly, and the tour began to weigh heavily on him. As the tour went on, Gaye's paranoia intensified, creeping into every part of his life, including his performances. He didn't just have bodyguards for the sake of celebrity. He hired them out of fear for his safety. He was so concerned about potential threats that he insisted his sister be the one to bring him water on stage, believing that anyone else might poison him. This obsessive paranoia drained him emotionally and physically, and he found himself wrestling with relentless depression. Every time he arrived in a new city, he was convinced it might be his last performance. The stress was too much. His body began to give out. In Florida, he was hospitalized for exhaustion. The weight of the tour was casing him, just as he had feared. Eventually, Gaye could no longer endure the demands of the tour and returned to his family home where he sought solace. But this wasn't a comfortable refuge. It was a tense environment that reignited old wounds. His father, Marvin Gaye Sr., was a strict Pentecostal preacher who had dominated Gaye's childhood with harsh punishments and unyielding rules. As Marvin Gaye once put it, growing up in his father's house was like living with a king, a very peculiar, changeable, cruel, and all-powerful king. Gaye's father wasn't just strict, he was a complicated figure with deep flaws.
You know why you didn't make it one thing? Remember you asked us to pray for you? That's one time I didn't pray for you. I won't tell you why, because I didn't want them to break you up.
According to Gaye's sister Zeola, their father was also a closeted cross-dresser who struggled with alcoholism. When sober, he could be compassionate, but under the influence, he transformed into a bitter and distant figure. Despite his flaws, some of Gaye's family members maintained that he wasn't a monster. But to Gaye, the pain and fear of his childhood remained potent memories. Being back under his father's roof didn't provide Gaye with the peace he desperately needed. Instead, he became more self-destructive, continuing to use drugs even at home. His mother, Alberta, was heartbroken to watch him spiral, and each time he promised it would be the last time. But people kept supplying him with drugs, and he grew increasingly erratic, even obsessively fixating on a gun he kept in his room. In a disturbing moment, he hurled the gun through his bedroom window without even opening it. It was clear that Gaye was trapped in a cycle of fear, anger, and despair. In the last year of his life, Gaye's relationships with women were turbulent and marked by instability. He had been seeing a woman named Deborah Derrick, who claimed to be carrying his child. Unfortunately, Derrick later miscarried. But even before that loss, the tension within the Gaye household was too much for her to handle. The toxic atmosphere drove her away, and she ultimately moved into her own apartment, urging Gaye to join her and leave the chaos behind by going to Europe. But Gaye couldn't seem to escape the hold of his family home, where he continued to live in a volatile environment with his father. Gaye's relationships with other women during this time were also complicated. Family accounts suggest that various women came in and out of the Gaye household in those final months. Many of these women faced his volatile outbursts, which were likely exacerbated by his drug use. His temper was well known, and even though his struggles with women were long-standing, they worsened as he reached his breaking point. At the time of his death, Marvin Gaye was the father of 3 children, Nona, Frankie, and Marvin Gaye III. His oldest son, Marvin Gaye III, had been adopted by Marvin and his first wife, Anna Gordy. The circumstances around Marvin Gaye III's birth were controversial. His biological mother was Anna's niece, Denise Gordy, who was just 15 years old when she had him. Gaye's other 2 children, Nona and Frankie, were from his second marriage to Janice Hunter, whom he had met when she was only 17. While Gaye's interest in younger women wasn't unusual in the music industry of that era, it added yet another layer of complexity to his already chaotic personal life. In retrospect, Marvin Gaye is celebrated as an iconic figure, but during his final years, he was competing in an industry filled with some of the greatest musical talents of all time. The pressure, both internal and external, was enormous. Just before his death, Gaye made a final desperate attempt on his own life. 4 days before his death, he reportedly attempted to jump out of a car traveling at 60 miles per hour. Miraculously, he survived with just some bruises. This was not his first S-side attempt. In 1969, he had considered shooting himself but was stopped by Motown founder Berry Gordy. In 1979, he ingested a large quantity of coke, hoping that it would end his life without the violence of a gun. These repeated attempts highlight a man grappling with a profound struggle to survive. In the last months of his life, Gaye rarely left his house unless he was high. He was spotted wandering on freeway overpasses, confused and disoriented. The few times he did leave, he would eventually be brought home, where he continued his psychological battles, especially with his father. Gaye's intense relationship with his father had haunted him all his life. And now, back under the same roof, the old wounds resurfaced, creating an environment fraught with tension. On April 1, 1984, a small incident ignited the powder keg. It started with Marvin Sr. looking for an insurance letter. Frustrated and unable to find it, he started yelling at Alberta. At this point, Marvin Gaye stepped in to defend his mother, escalating the situation. According to family members, Marvin Gaye was in a state of undress, which only seemed to aggravate his father further. The confrontation turned physical, with Gaye eventually striking his father. Afterward, Marvin Sr. left the room only to return with a gun that Gaye himself had given him months earlier. In a tragic turn of events, Marvin Sr. fired the weapon, hitting Gaye twice in the chest. According to Gaye's brother Frankie, as Marvin lay dying, he reportedly said that he had his father shoot him because he couldn't bring himself to do it. It was a haunting end to a life marked by immense talent and intense inner turmoil. Marvin Gaye was pronounced dead at 1:01 p.m., just 1 day before his 45th birthday. In the final months of his life, Gaye was plagued by paranoia, substance and a deteriorating mental state. He lashed out at those around him, sought comfort in drugs and and seemed to spiral further into despair. But these last months don't capture the full picture of Marvin Gaye. His struggles were deeply rooted in a childhood spent under the rule of an authoritarian father, a man whose influence would eventually lead to his son's untimely death. By 1984, Gaye's career had reached remarkable heights, but the successes couldn't erase the shadows of his past. His addiction, his tendency toward younger partners, and his self-destructive behaviors were symptoms of a man who was desperately running from his past, his pain, and ultimately, himself. So was Marvin Gaye just a troubled star who met a tragic end, or was he a target in an industry filled with secrets? His death remains one of music's darkest chapters, leaving questions that may never be answered. Marvin once sang about love and understanding, but his life and death painted a picture of anything but peace. Could there have been something much more sinister, some hidden force shaping his life and eventual death? Perhaps we'll never know, but Marvin Gaye's legacy as an icon and a man haunted by demons, real or imagined, lives on. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.